this is all right. All we need to do is find a parking spot.
Yeah, sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it's difficult.
Excuse me, sir. Yeah? I need to take a look in the bag, sir.
Why would you want to do that?
Sir, my name is Delia O'Hara from Grace Brothers, and you've been observed removing items from the store and leaving without paying.
Now, why would I go and do something stupid like that for?
You could show me a receipt, sir, and you could be on your way directly.
You know what? You got me, miss. I've just been a little busy lately. I must have just clean forgot. I'll tell you what, why don't we settle this now?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to come with me, sir.
Well, maybe I've got something else you might be interested in.
Put that thing away, it's just a toy.
Just a toy, is it? You better be fucking right, bitch. Got a gun! Gun! Look out! You'll have to do your shopping another time, I'm afraid. I can drive! I can go!
Where to?
How about your funeral? Go! Come on, drive! Fucking faster!
Meet Jockey Smith, serial armed robber, prison escapee and public enemy #1. A career criminal who could turn a minor incident into a major crime. Tonight we get the facts behind the fiction and meet the real Jockey Smith, public enemy #1. James Edward Jockey Smith was one of Australia's most dangerous criminals, a prolific armed robber who dreamed of raising horses but ultimately just raised hell. Tonight we hear firsthand from the policeman who faced Jockey in his final life and death struggle. And through expert analysis and dramatised scenes, we examine what motivated one of Australia's most wanted men.
Jockey Smith was a very willing criminal, full of violence. He was a violent little man.
Jockey Smith was certainly one of the country's best armed robbers.
Evening, Lloyd. Have a nice weekend at the races, mate.
He was seen as public enemy #1 for his violence and his lack of respect for law and order.
He was a small man by stature. He didn't fight, so when he was in trouble, he reached for a gun.
Tough wouldn't stop to use a firearm if he was cornered, particularly by police.
Don't fucking move.
No, don't.
His gun would have been about 30 centimetres from my face. He raised a firearm at my head and said, "I'm going to kill you."
Jockey Smith served his first prison sentence at just 19, where he met his mentor Ronald Ryan, the last man to hang in Australia. Jockey was a serial armed robber who was also charged with several attempted murders. He escaped from Pentridge prison, faced kidnap and drug trafficking charges, and was linked to the brutal murder of a man in his own family home. An astounding record for a man who spent nearly 25 years behind bars and died at 50.
Well, he became known as public enemy #1 through the fact that he staged a number of armed hold-ups. He was involved in drug trafficking. He'd escaped from the City Watch House in Melbourne, and he had abducted people to try to make good his escape.
I can go! I can drive!
He came from an environment where conflict was the norm. You never backed down. You had to get out of it some way or other.
When Jockey was confronted, he normally responded violently. His only means of escape was using a firearm, and that's why his history is marked by frequent, predictable attempts to use a firearm to escape.
He had a big reputation in relation to his propensity for violence, which is demonstrated by all of the offences that he was charged with. At one stage, he was sentenced to 3 separate life sentences.
Forensic psychologist Sandy Ray assesses men like Jockey Smith for the courts and sees a lot of rage behind Smith's actions.
This man is living in anger, and as a result of anger, that men often have very poor impulse control. So he is in a constant state of I'm on, and he's got the gun to back it up with. And as a result of having the gun, it means that he's always prepared to shoot.
That lack of control may explain Jockey's impulsive decision to escalate a minor shoplifting incident into a fully blown hostage crisis.
Late yesterday afternoon, security guards at Grace Brothers Erina questioned a man suspected of shoplifting. He challenged them with a revolver, threatening the life of one of the officers, then ran to a nearby car, ordering a man and his wife to drive him down the road.
For some reason, Smith has gone into Erina Fair. For another reason, he's decided to leave the store with goods he hasn't purchased. He's been confronted by security and again has reacted like a complete madman.
He pulled a gun on the store detective, who initially thought it was an imitation.
Put that thing away, it's just a toy.
Just a toy, is it? You better be fucking right, bitch.
He's thinking, I'm not getting pinched for this. I'm not letting her take me, frog march me back into the shop like some 12-year-old schoolboy. And I'm not fucking paying for this stuff either. And it's as simple as that, so do your best.
She quickly realised he was serious, and then he's bailed up a couple in their car.
You'll have to do your shopping another time, I'm afraid. I can drive!
It was only a short trip, jumping out of that car and hailing this one. He made the driver get out and sped off to nearby Saratoga and was last seen running into bushland there.
Effectively, by the time he leaves there, he's turned shoplifting into kidnapping, threatening to kill, steal motor vehicle. I mean, the man's a lunatic.
Former policeman Brian Murphy has seen the same compulsive need to steal in other criminals.
I've known blokes like Jockey Smith. They'll go in, they might do a job with a safe or might do an armed robbery and get 100,000. They get up next morning, go down to the local paper shop and steal some birthday cards and a couple of packets of chewy. It's a part of their makeup. They hate spending the money that they've stolen. It's their money. Even though it belongs to somebody else, it's theirs.
He was somebody who might have had $1,000 in their pocket, yet still would, you know, pinch a rubbish bin lid.
I don't know what the fascination he had with bins. Jimmy used to say to him, is there much money involved in plastic rubbish bins? You know, can we make a profit out of plastic rubbish bins? He'd leave an armed robbery with 230 grand in the boot of the car and pull up outside a hardware store to run up and knock off half a dozen rubbish bins out the front. You know, he had a thing about plastic rubbish bins.
Forensic psychologists agree Jockey Smith's volatility was one of the factors that made him so dangerous.
He just simply acts on impulse. And as far as he's concerned, he wanted the bin, didn't see the point in paying for it, or there was an obstacle to paying for it. In any case, he removes the bin and he stopped. As soon as he stopped, he responds in the same way he has previously. Predictably, he pulls a firearm.
It's the absolute lack of consequential thinking and the absolute lack of concern about the consequences, because these guys, they live in the minute. It's, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to do it. There's no sitting down thinking. It's bang, it's done.
Born in 1942, James Edward Jockey Smith was one of 8 kids. The family lived in rural Victoria, and his father spent much of his time away looking for work, leaving Jockey's invalid mother to raise the children alone. Life was tough, but the family had a happy home and there was no history of criminality.
Jockey, Jimmy Smith started off as, just a pretty typical kid in a poor family. The father's a hard worker. The mother is invalided. She raises 8 children and she manages to feed them, care for them, and at the same time she's involved, and so is the father. They're involved in all sorts of community activity. They were people, I suppose, who were dedicated to other people and to helping those less fortunate, even though they weren't that fortunate themselves.
Importantly, he's one of 8 children. So being the second last of 8 children, even from a child, he has to fight for what is his. He's fighting at the table for food, he's fighting in the house for affection, he's fighting for relevance amongst his siblings. He leaves home early and becomes involved as an apprentice jockey.
Jockey left school at 14 and started saving for his first horse. He was a talented rider and his small build meant he was the perfect size to race.
I think around about the time he started his first job, which was a labouring job in one of the factories, he bought his first horse, brought it home, trained it how to do tricks, and there was this love of animals, basically.
But unfortunately, he grows too much, he weighs too much, so he becomes frustrated.
Jockey couldn't keep his weight down and he quickly fell out of favour on the racetrack. Unable to ride, he was bitter at what he saw as a betrayal and started stealing from his employers to get even.
I think there was one deal where he was supposed to get something like £5 a week and the use of a car with petrol. And that worked for a couple of weeks, and then finally the trainer said, well, we'll stuff you, Jockey. You're not getting any other money, you're getting food here, that's enough. And Jockey probably thought, well, that ain't good enough.
His career as an apprentice jockey didn't last very long because he was very soon getting involved with garage break and steal, shop break and steal, and then he was doing time in prison.
It's probably true that he didn't have a lot of options, having been, you know, put all his eggs in one basket to become a jockey, and then what else was he to do? And he still would have had little man syndrome too, because even if he wasn't small enough to be a jockey, he wasn't a big man.
Jockey served his first sentence at 19 for stealing. In prison, he met Ronald Ryan, a much older career criminal, adept at armed robbery and safe blowing.
Ronald Ryan and Jockey Smith had one thing in common. They loved horses, they loved gambling.
Jimmy Smith and Ronald Ryan became firm friends, so much so that their families were friends. Ronald Ryan was Jimmy Smith's tutor in crime, and Jimmy Smith respected him enormously. He looked up to him.
Ryan would have passed on to him the knowledge that if you're violent enough, if you're mad enough, people will regard you, will respect you. There are opportunities in being a very violent person.
Old prison buddies Ryan and Jockey Smith quickly became partners in crime, and Jockey proved a keen student.
So why'd you stop riding?
Oh, got sick of eating celery, sitting in saunas.
Must be all right being on a horse when it's going that fast.
Fucking love horses. Beautiful creatures. Notes game doing it for quids.
Money's easy here, mate.
Oh, don't know about that. This is killing my back.
I'll follow you, all right. Head straight to Geelong. We'll unload it there.
How much do you reckon we'll get for this?
500, 600, maybe $1,000. Just in time for Christmas. Now, what are you going to do if you see the Jacks?
Fuck 'em. Shoot 'em.
You don't want to go down in a blaze of glory over a few tinned hams.
What do you reckon, Ron? Live to fight another day, eh?
You be careful, Jimmy. You shoot a copper, you'll hang.
Coppers are weak as piss, mate. How you doing, fellas? Whoa! All right, copper.
It's obviously a very early example of Smith's hot-headedness when confronted by police or in situations like that where his liberty is at risk. And you can only imagine that Ronald Ryan would have been spitting chips over the whole incident.
Smith drove the truck from Colac to St Mauriac, where he got pulled over by the police, and he tried to make good an escape using a firearm.
Whoa!
Fortunately for the police, nothing happened with the revolver.
Ronald Ryan must have thought, who is this lunatic that I'm committing crimes with? You'd wonder why he ever wanted to have anything to do with him again.
All right, copper.
Jockey had pulled a gun on a cop for the first time, but it wouldn't be the last.
Frustration seems to have permeated the early years of Jockey Smith, and frustration and tension and blocked opportunities seem to feature in almost every single one of his conflicts with police officers. There could have been 3 or 4 other police officers that could have been killed if Jockey had been more useful with firearms. He wasn't. But I suggest he use the firearm because it was probably the most effective means of intimidating someone.
Always trigger happy, it was only sheer luck which saved Jockey Smith from killing a policeman, a crime for which he would have hung. Meanwhile, Jockey's mentor Ronald Ryan was heading for disaster after shooting a prison guard dead during an escape from Pentridge Prison in 1966. Quickly recaptured, Ryan was controversially sentenced to death.
There was a lot of opposition to his hanging. It was a political hanging, many people think. Henry Bolte, who was the Premier of Victoria at that particular time, was facing re-election and he wanted to make a tough stance.
Rumours soon spread that Jockey was planning to spring Ryan from Pentridge and save him from the hangman.
There was a very strong story, some of it I suppose is rumour, but a very strong story going that Jimmy Smith was trying to release Ryan only moments before he was due to hang.
I heard at some stage that he was prepared to use explosives to free Ronald Ryan from prison.
They were going to use gelignite to brazen their way through the wall of Pentridge, and from there on they were going to use automatic weapons, and I guess the idea would have been shoot all comers.
Whatever the truth of Smith's plan to free his partner in crime, he didn't succeed, and Ryan was hung at Pentridge Prison on the 3rd of February 1967. With his racing career over and his mentor dead, Smith had to find his own way. Ironically, his path led him straight back to Pentridge, where he faced an 8-year sentence for receiving stolen goods and possessing explosives. Here Smith rapidly became something of a legend amongst his fellow prisoners for his audacious scams. Ray Mooney was imprisoned alongside Jockey, who had landed himself a job in the prison garage. There, Governor Eric Shade took advantage of all the free labour and got his car serviced every Monday.
Shade used to bring his car in every Monday to get serviced. And Jockey's mates on Sunday night would be shooting around to Eric Shade's house, getting under the car, putting all the contraband under the car, and the next day Shade just drives his car in to get serviced. And that was a very clever manoeuvre, that. And of course, Jockey had that incredible status with inside the prison system of somebody who was a very clever planner.
Jockey Smith was one of those prisoners, inmates, that was just held in the highest regard and esteem by other prisoners. And the funny thing was that even the prisoners while I was there, 90% of them wouldn't have known Jockey Smith, and yet his name still was hallowed all through that prison system. And he was a leader, Jockey, and he was a thinker, and he was he was a master planner.
Where I worked, we had access to telephones, and very few prisoners had access to telephones. So Jockey would sneak up to where I was working, and he'd say, Ray, just need to use the phone, mate. And he'd pick up the phone and he'd say, yes, Officer Andrews here, Prison Officer Andrews, can you get me 2 corned beef sandwiches and a packet of Marlboro? Have them sent round and I'll get my boy to go and get them. So the prison officer's canteen would wrap them all up. It took them 6 months before they worked out and they got their bills. Jockey had been living off the prison officer's canteen for 6 months. Now, again, you go into a certain status when you've got that ability. That takes real courage and pre-planning and everything, and he got away with it.
Jockey served 5 years and walked free in 1972, but less than a year later was in trouble again, once more pulling his pistol on a policeman who tried to arrest him. He may have been small, but with a gun in his hand, Jockey was earning his new status as public enemy #1.
I think he loved having a gun with him because he wasn't that physically fit. I was a bit of a slob sort of a bloke, you know, he wasn't very fit, what have you. Because it was a bloody squeaky voice that used to drive him mad. But I think the gun was part of his persona. He had to have that gun there.
It was with him all the time. He wasn't afraid to pull it out, use it, whether they were policemen or not. Now, blokes like Jockey Smith use that as their height, their strength and their power to be able to terrify people.
Well, I think it's a stereotype about, you know, small man, big car. In this case, it was small man has gun. And with the gun, you know, he had the power. He had the ability to take someone's life, to cause them a serious injury, and he felt invincible when he had that gun in his hand.
In late 1973, Jockey went on an armed robbery spree across 2 states. Police finally caught him in December 1974 after a tip-off, and he was remanded at Pentridge Prison. But Jockey didn't plan on staying there long.
You hate to see your husband?
Boyfriend.
Boyfriend, huh? He in for long?
6 months.
6 months. Very lonely. Have a good day, Michelle. Next.
Excuse me.
Just sign there. Have a good day, Julie.
Thank you.
Next. I'll just sign there, mate.
Got a smoke, mate?
Of course. Take the packet.
Thanks, boss.
Well, where did you lose it?
I don't know, officer. I have on my shirt, and I look on my shirt and there's no more. Maybe dropped.
Where were you sitting?
People are waiting to get out.
Lots of people are waiting to get out of Pentridge, sweetheart.
Well, I've got to get back to work, so can you put your finger out?
It is out. Just be patient. You go back in there. Look for it. I need you to find it.
Va bene, va bene.
Look, I got my pass. Can I just leave it here?
All right, if you've got your pass, you can leave it here.
Thank you.
Now, look, go back in the yard, have a good look around. I can't let you leave without the pass.
Okay, okay.
See you later, Duncan.
Yeah, see you later.
The thing that you have to realise that he's a remand prisoner. It's not like the rest of Pentridge Prison where everyone's in prison greens, white T-shirts. Jockey's awaiting trial. And so he's in his civilian clothes. And so is everyone else in the remand section. So when he jumps the fence and gets into the visitors section, he doesn't necessarily look out of place. He's just in the clothes he was arrested in.
Some believe Smith had planned the collection of the visitors' pass.
Got a smoke, mate?
Of course. Take the packet.
While others believe he simply used charm to talk his way out of Pentridge.
The story goes, pulled up one of the visitors who looked a little bit of a knockabout type of a guy and said, look, I've lost my pass. And I'm in a hurry. Any chance I can grab yours? And you just mentioned it when you go through that you lost your pass. It won't be a problem. You'll be able to go out. Got hold of the pass, walked straight up to where they took the passes and let the visitors back out, handed the pass in and walked out.
Nobody got shot. He didn't have to climb ladders. He didn't have to use bolt cutters or have explosives or machine guns.
Now, there are stories that he wished the guard, Duncan, a cheery farewell as he left.
See you later, Duncan.
Yeah, see you later.
The manner of his escape, it was certainly very cheeky, and it was certainly one which would have caused a bit of embarrassment to the prison officers and the prison system itself.
No one hurt, no one any the wiser, one of the all-time great escapes from a maximum security prison in Melbourne, and naturally as a result of that, Jockey went into cult status.
Jockey Smith was incredibly impulsive, acting first and dealing with the consequences later. Was it this personality trait which allowed him to escape so brazenly?
Well, this guy obviously had a talent of being able to charm his way out of or into any situation. It's a shame that he didn't use it more often instead of going for the gun. And I guess by that ploy of taking the pass, that shows just so much ego and a belief in himself that, you know, it's a megamaniac, really, isn't it?
I thought it was absolutely hilarious that he walked out jail. I mean, just would not happen today. So it struck me as two things, that what I called two O's. He was both observant and opportunistic. Two very powerful combinations if you're a criminal.
This is a man who understands that opportunity is everything. And if you hesitate at an opportunity, you don't get a second chance. So walking out of prison is extremely opportunistic. He was brave enough to seize the moment and then leave. And that kind of grandiosity, that kind of flamboyance fits a psychopath nicely.
After his brazen escape from Pentridge at the end of 1974, Jockey Smith went on the run and fled to Sydney. There he hooked up with the love of his life, Valerie Hill. Like Smith, Hill was well known to police in both Sydney and Melbourne.
She had always associated with criminals. One of her partners before Smith was a very high-profile Melbourne criminal who became very well known here in Sydney. She then moved on to Smith and in fact married him in jail.
Well, Valerie fell into his lifestyle very easily, very neatly. She was able to support him, provide structure, provide assistance, provide a family, provide an affectionate base, provide a behavioural anchor, all those things he couldn't have managed on his own. And she supported him all the way through his life.
I think they were deeply in love with each other. I think they were deeply committed to each other. And she was supportive, if you like, as a criminal's mistress first and later when they were both in jail together. But then you've got to ask yourself, well, if he adored her that much, then why allow himself to go to prison in the first place, if the connection was that close?
After moving from place to place, Smith and Hill set up home in Kangaroo Valley in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales. In his remote hideout, Smith regularly changed his appearance, putting on weight or losing it, and changing his hairstyle regularly to fool anyone looking for him.
He was a master. I think he was a master of disguise. You know, like he wouldn't hesitate to put a wig on and walk down the street.
He was a man of disguises, no doubt about that. At times he would wear very long hair, variously parted on the side, variously brushed back. He'd have a moustache. Sometimes he would look overweight. Other times he was slim.
He started out as a jockey, and that was a jockey's life. You know, you were all the time into weight control and what have you. So he could quite easily be the chameleon weight watcher very easily in terms of up and down, and he did have that ability to disguise himself.
Yeah, I'm surprised that A Current Affair and Today Tonight never did a story on Jockey Smith, because he seemed to be the ultimate slimmer. He could lose weight overnight.
Smith lived like a local. He used a pretense of normality to have the life he'd always wanted, trading horses.
Whilst he was on the run and whilst he was very, very careful about who he talked to, he still got involved in going to the local pub. He got involved in social events. He had people around for barbecues. He went to their places. He went to the local dance.
Well, in a sense, he's probably gone around in a bit of a circle, because he started off as an apprentice jockey. He's back in the horse industry, which he loves. He probably felt he was at home.
He's brazen, he's active, he's out there with the horses. He's taking them to city meets, he's off to country meets.
Whether drinking with the locals, working with his horses, or sitting back at his hideout with Valerie Hill, Jockey Smith easily blended into the small-town atmosphere. And with his trademark brazen cheek, Jockey assumed the alias Tommy Cummings.
He's hiding in plain sight, effectively, and calling himself Tommy Cummings, taking the names of two of his favourite trainers, obviously TJ Tommy Smith and Bart Cummings.
That is classical Jockey Smith, absolutely classical Jockey Smith. And you would think today, when we look at it, that, oh, everyone would pick that, but no one did pick it. It was only after the event that people realised that that was sort of like an amalgam of, you know, famous horse trainers.
He's taking the mickey out of everyone. And it's quite incomprehensible that he's living in the community and the police have no idea that he's there. Even with the changing of the identities, it's remarkable that he's managed to pull that off for so long.
A master of disguise, Jockey managed to pull off the fake identity and create a whole parallel life for himself and Valerie, whilst committing a spate of armed robberies on the side. For a while, he was even able to control his urge to shoot first when confronted by police.
That's lovely, isn't it? Good morning, sir. Is there a problem, officer? Call it short, were we? How do you mean? As I just drove up just now, I noticed you're having a bit of a hit and miss against the pole. Oh. Man's got to do what a man's got to do. You got your licence with you, sir? Yeah. Yeah, it's just in the car. I'll just get it. must have left it in my other wallet. I was in a bit of a rush this morning. I got a big day in Sydney today, so must have left it there.
Where you going?
Oh, I'm a horse trainer, and this big boy's got a big race today at Rose Hill.
What's his name?
Dornier.
What's your name, sir?
I'm Tommy Cummins. Nice to meet you.
I think I've heard of you. Where do you train?
Oh, I got a nice little setup just outside of Nowra. Are you interested in the turf?
Have a flutter every now and then.
Well, you could do a lot worse than put a few bob on this bad boy. Eh? He's trained to the minute and raring to go.
We know that Jockey Smith was pulled over for a traffic offence, and the police came over to him. He introduced himself as Tommy Cummings.
I'm Tommy Cummins. Nice to meet you.
I think I've heard of you.
You know, he had the horse float in the back, and the horse was there, and he was on his way to a racetrack.
On this particular occasion, he gets pulled up by a copper, and he's thinking, I'm done.
He would have had the gun very close by, probably in the glove box or under the seat. He didn't want to get caught. Having spent 25 of the last 30 years in jail, or 33 years in jail, you don't want to go back there.
Obviously, he was capable of charm and great persuasion at times, and he was able to talk his way out of that. But I'm fairly sure that Jockey Smith would have had his left hand to one side reaching for the gun if there was going to be any problem.
Psychologists believe that after creating a successful life on the run, Jockey would have been even more determined to stay out of prison.
Most people don't like giving up their freedom, so whatever it takes to sustain that, he will do. So in that 3 years, he's also had an opportunity to be calm, to be a bit calmer than what he previously it looks like he was. So maybe he started to learn some skills of what we call consequential thinking, showing some foresight, managing some of that rage that seemed to be inside him, because the pull of freedom is greater than trying to give away those psychological states.
Jockey was a chameleon who made friends under his assumed identity and enjoyed living out the fantasy life he'd always dreamed of. But although Jockey was good at training horses, his own wild and impulsive nature couldn't be overcome, and he continued committing violent and terrifying armed robberies, shooting his way out whenever he was cornered. And once again, it was another policeman, Jerry Ambrose, who was lucky to escape with his life after a car chase in 1976 turned nasty.
Jerry Ambrose pulled him over, and Jockey responded the way he would normally respond, and that was using a firearm to escape. Jerry just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He clearly had tried to kill a detective to evade capture, which was his style. He'd done that since he was in his early 20s.
Jockey then pulled off another massive armed robbery, which also ended with shots being fired.
In 1977, the CBA Bank, as it was then known, at South Hurstville was held up. There were 3 offenders, and they got away with about $180,000, which was then Australia's largest bank armed robbery. Very shortly after that, a off-duty security officer challenged the offenders, and I've very good reason to believe that it was Jockey Smith discharged a shot at the security officer, which struck a telegraph pole nearby. They got away.
Jockey had lived a charmed life, but the fear of arrest was always on his mind. Hearing rumours in town that a stranger had been asking after him, Jockey and Val moved on to the small town of Nowra. But Jockey's violent and criminal streak was never far from the surface. And despite being wanted for armed robbery and attempted murder, Jockey was about to commit his worst crime yet.
What the fuck?
Evening, Lloyd. Have a nice weekend at the races, mate.
What do you pricks want?
Just show us where the safe is, mate, and we'll be on our way.
You're out of luck, fellas. Got no cash here.
Oh, Jesus. Sorry, Lloyd. What were you saying, mate?
You can hit me all you like, but it's not going to suddenly make money appear. Fuck.
Go and check on the wife and kids. Hey, and don't take any shit from them. Now, what were you saying, Lloyd? Huh? Oh, that's right. You were going to tell me where the fucking safe is.
I don't have any money.
Lloyd, where's the safe, mate? We are
I don't have a safe. I got belted on Saturday. I've got no fucking money.
Am I to believe that you're the only bookie in New South Wales without a fucking safe, mate?
They're all asleep.
Dad?
Get him.
Oh, Jesus.
Hello, son. Can you tell me where your daddy's safe is?
Oh, fuck, he's at the tent!
You're not a very good father, are you, Lloyd? Mate, what if something happened to you and your kids didn't know where to find your money? How would they pay for your funeral?
Please. There's no money. There's no safe.
That's bullshit, Lloyd. Let's go.
Lloyd Tidmarsh was a respected and popular bookmaker. And the story goes that three masked men burst into his home late one night and held him at gunpoint and demanded to know where the safe was.
Just show us where the safe is, mate, and we'll be on our way.
At this point, the son, Michael, from memory, came out.
Oh, fuck, he's at the tent!
So this is a really harrowing situation for the family. At the same time as this was unfolding, Michelle, the daughter, is awoken by the noise and she's lying there, petrified.
She heard a characteristic whining voice, demanding to know from Lloyd Tidmarsh, where's the safe?
Lloyd, where's the safe, mate? We know you've got one. Where is it?
They've gone to the address believing there's a substantial amount of money in the place, and they discover there is no money. Their information's wrong. They're obviously upset and angry.
Am I to believe that you're the only bookie in New South Wales without a fucking safe, mate?
And they're realising that there's a chance that they're going to go down because I would imagine Tidmarsh knows who the people are in his house, and that's probably why they killed him.
That's bullshit, Lloyd.
The callous killing of a man in front of his family shocked Australia.
Tidmarsh and his 16-year-old son Michael were ordered to lie face down on the floor, while wife Irene and daughter Michelle remained in their bedrooms upstairs.
The Tidmarsh murder was an absolutely disgraceful crime and totally unnecessary. It's been poorly planned, appallingly executed for no gain and the loss of a man's life. It was a terrible, terrible crime.
Jockey Smith, public enemy number one, was now wanted for murder, attempted murder and a spree of armed robberies, as well as his escape from Pentridge. Casting their net wide, the police finally found his hideaway after a local estate agent recalled renting a property to a man who fitted Jockey's description. Over 100 police officers moved into place and the trap was set. Former Detective Superintendent Brian Harding was part of the operation.
We, as best we could, started to move into position, but by the time we got up there, he was gone. He'd gone back into the house, he retrieved firearms, he retrieved money, and he disappeared into the bush. We surrounded the house, called upon the occupants to surrender. Valerie June Hill was in the house. She was arrested, but in the house there was many firearms, bulletproof vests, police scanners, handcuffs, disguises, you name it. It was a typical professional armed robbers kit.
Jockey took off through the scrub, stole a bicycle and headed for the neighbouring town of Bomaderry.
He was spotted at Bomaderry and he was in a phone box. Dennis Gilligan and Bob Godden from the hold-up squad to arrest him. He pulled a gun on them.
And they questioned him as to who he was, and Bob Godden was in fact more or less in the phone box with him. And at that point, Smith drew a revolver, thrust it into Bob Godden's stomach, and he had the hammer, in fact, cocked. And what Bob did was, and I'm sure it saved his life, he placed the webbing of his thumb and forefinger in this fashion.
And the hammer caught the webbing between his index finger and his thumb and probably saved him from being fatally shot. And Smith was arrested.
He was charged with quite a few offences. He tried to bribe us, but he was charged, bail refused, and then what followed were numerous court cases.
After nearly 3 years on the run, in 1977, Australia's public enemy number one was finally back behind bars, facing 3 life sentences for the murder of Lloyd Tidmarsh and the attempted murder of 2 policemen. In prison, he became a self-taught lawyer and conducted his own defence. But his distinctive voice was the giveaway. Jockey was found guilty of Tidmarsh's murder after his daughter Michelle identified him.
It was some years later that Michelle Tidmarsh was taken into a courtroom where Jockey Smith was acting as his own counsel, representing himself, and he was standing up examining a witness, and Michelle Tidmarsh told police that that was the same voice, the same man who had killed her father.
I went up to the trial and I was up there when the daughter gave evidence. The evidence was that she had identified or could identify and did identify Jockey Smith's voice. But as I said, the typical high-pitched voice of a jockey.
The Tidmarsh murder seemed an open and shut case, but Jockey Smith worked hard to have Michelle Tidmarsh's evidence discredited. After years of court battles, Jockey finally succeeded in having his murder conviction overturned. But Jockey still had his other convictions to serve, meaning he didn't walk out of jail a free man until 1992. Reunited with wife Valerie, Jockey moved to Bondi, but it took less than a day for his past to catch up with him.
As it was, in 1992, he was released. He finally walked out of Long Bay Jail, a free man. He went straight to Val, who was living in Bondi. That night, they celebrated. They went out for dinner, came back, and as they were walking up the stairs, a shadow emerged from the darkness of the recess, called Smith's name and gunned him down.
The balaclava-clad gunman followed the couple into the building, firing 7 shots. 3 .45 calibre bullets tore into Smith's chest and stomach as he attempted to flee upstairs.
He was critically injured. Val was screaming. Jockey Smith was scampering as best he could, blood leaking out of his body. He was scampering up the steps trying to get away.
His blood pressure was so low they just didn't think he was going to make it, but he did make it. And he sustained some severe gunshot wounds. I mean, they weren't, they weren't just in the foot.
True to the criminal code of honour, Jockey also refused to name the man who had shot him, although speculation was rife that he'd been hit by one of Valerie's jealous ex-boyfriends who wanted revenge. Jockey was lucky to survive, and as he lay near death in hospital, an unexpected gift arrived from prisoners across New South Wales.
And it was a shoebox with $32,000 in it. And that might give you some idea of how people felt, his people felt about him.
Jockey was also collecting money from another source. Aged nearly 50, Australia's most prolific bank robber had reinvented himself as a drug dealer.
He would have seen it as being an easy way, and he probably would have thought to himself, you can do an armed robbery and you might only get $2 grand, but you can sell a huge amount of drugs and get significantly more than that with a fairly low risk value. I mean, once you hook people into drugs, they want more drugs, and Smith was someone who's prepared to provide it.
Jockey and Valerie moved to the New South Wales Central Coast. But Jockey was soon under investigation for trafficking, and on the 29th of November 1992, he found a listening device in his home. Knowing police were onto him, Jockey left home and headed to Erina Fair Shopping Centre, where he turned a minor shoplifting incident into a major crisis. In just a few hours, Jockey had gone from free man to wanted criminal. He headed to Victoria and hid with fellow criminal Christopher Binns. Always cautious, Jockey lay low for a few weeks before venturing out one night to the local town of Daylesford. On the way there, his cautious driving caught the attention of a young constable, Ian Harris.
I saw a car ahead of me. I followed. This was about 8:30 on a Saturday night. I've caught up to the car and it was alerted that it was only travelling about 80 in the 100 zone, and this is a road I regularly drive. And it's a good 100 zone road, so I radioed to Ballarat Communications Centre a car check on the registration plate, and the radio operator came out and said it was a stolen car.
Harris's terrifying encounter with Jockey Smith was about to begin.
D24, Creswick 202 here. The red Ford station wagon has pulled into the Farmers Arms Hotel. I'm going to have to intercept him. He's been weaving all over the roads.
Evening.
Good evening, sir. Is this your car, mate?
No, actually, it's not.
Whose car is it then, sir?
It's a mate of mine. He lives up the Newell Highway.
You got some ID on you, mate?
Yeah, it's just in the car. There you go. Don't fucking move.
No, don't.
Don't touch your gun or I'll fucking do you.
I'm not doing nothing, OK? Just cool down, we can sort something out, all right?
Give us your gun.
Just relax.
Give me your fucking gun.
Is everything all right here?
Fuck off, mate. It's got nothing to do with you.
Mate, take it easy, all right?
Fuck off!
Mate, not in front of the kids!
Fuck off!
Stay inside! He's got a gun! Stay inside, OK? I said stay inside!
Out of the car, kids.
No, Dad, no.
I said get out!
What do you want, mate? What do you want?
I'll give you 10 seconds. Get your gun out of your holster and get on the bonnet.
OK, I'm going to reach slightly, OK? Don't shoot.
Fucking do it!
OK.
Now, fuck!
Ready, over!
Notorious criminal Edward Jockey Smith has been shot dead by Victorian police. The man, once called Australia's most wanted, ended his life in a shootout while on the run. Smith's criminal career was brought to an end by a routine police check on a stolen car.
Greg Davies was then a sergeant and was on duty at the communications centre at Ballarat Police Station.
Ian came up on the radio and he asked for a car check, a registration check. He gave us the registration number. I ran that through the system and it came up as a vehicle that had been stolen in Melbourne the previous day. Now, from that point on, that's when things started to heat up.
He pulled up outside the driveway of the Farmers Arms Hotel and the driver of the car approached me with his right hand hidden behind a folder.
Don't fucking move.
No, don't.
The male with the firearm raised it said, I'm going to kill you.
Don't touch your gun or I'll fucking do you.
He tried to reach, with his left hand, he tried to reach my firearm, which is in a holster on my right hip.
Give us your gun.
Just relax.
Give me your fucking gun.
At that point, a local man, Darren Neal, tried to intervene.
Fuck off!
But Jockey fired. Neal's kids started screaming and he retreated.
Fuck off!
Stay inside!
Well, it was a mad scramble to get as many police as we could out there.
With backup so far away, it was Darren Neal's bravery that saved Harris's life.
Get out!
Neal made sure his kids were safe and then drove back towards Jockey, distracting him just enough to allow Harris to reach for his gun.
I yelled, run him over, run him over.
Run him over!
I seized the moment and fired 2 shots, and three shots. I was standing that close, I knew I'd hit the person with the firearm.
Jockey had got away with pulling guns on policemen a number of times, but this time it would end in tragedy. Harris fired 3 times with his service revolver, and Jockey died instantly. Both Harris and Neal were awarded medals for bravery, but post-traumatic stress disorder meant Harris's career as a police officer was essentially finished.
I don't know that any police officer, general duties police officer, is equipped to deal with a person of the propensity for violence that Jockey Smith had, particularly when armed with a firearm, which was often the case in Smith's example. I think it was a dreadful day for Ian and probably a turning point in his life, and I don't know that he's ever been the same since.
Tragedy for everyone could have been averted if Smith had resisted the instinct to go for his gun.
When police searched him, they found in the pocket of his jeans was a canister of mace. He could have used that mace rather than fire shots at Ian Harris and Darren Neal, but he chose what he knew best.
Jockey has had a history of dealing with threats immediately. Someone else intervenes, someone he didn't suspect of intervening, a well-meaning civilian who probably would not normally have intervened.
For every negative stroke that comes your way, regardless of you bringing it on yourself or not, they all take their toll. He'd been gunned himself. He'd been involved with guns, the whole violent world. It spins and spins, and in the end, you spin with it. And, you know, the wheel turns and you're bound upon it. And you cannot get off that wheel, and in the end, you just lose the pot.
Jockey Smith's trigger-happy life as public enemy #1 had finally ended. The violent and criminal impulses he'd given into all his life were ultimately his undoing. The angry man who had spent decades armed and dangerous had finally met the vicious and bloody end he'd threatened to so many others.